Hello YouTube, I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney. On this channel, we answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answers they need from an employment attorney. But not today. Not today because I have tried to make this video, somewhere between 5 and 10 times, including an hour and 40-minute collaboration that I shot with another attorney in this field. And I'm frustrated. But I feel strongly that this is something that should be talked about in our field because it's a thorny and complex topic. And if we don't talk about it, if we don't discuss it, only a couple firms are going to keep using this practice. And that means fewer people will be helped. And if fewer people are helped, I guess that means firms like mine will make more money, but it doesn't seem like we're living up to the fullness of what we might hope for our industry. So let me talk about the collaboration really quick, and then I'll get into the meat of the video. I did an hour and 40-minute collaboration with an elder statesman of our field. Not the eldest statesman, I don't want to overstate the case, but someone who put his decades into the field, real head-knocking decades, like doing the work, helping the people, putting up the numbers, making the money, a real practitioner in our field, like the real deal. And no criticism, truly a storied career. And we did an hour and 40 minutes on the thorny topic of employment attorneys hiring and utilizing private investigators to gather evidence in their cases. And I'll get very shortly into why this is a thorny topic. But suffice it to say, I'm not going to play that collaboration for you because that elder statesman ultimately felt that the video we shot was detrimental to our two law firms in the sense that it was both a bad idea for our brands to talk about this topic, which can be a bit murky and complex, but also not great to share, some of the things that might separate some firms from other firms. So that's his right to not play that video. I think it's a tragedy and a travesty. And such is the deal that I forge with people when they come on the channel. If they don't want the video to go live, it does not. And I make that deal specifically to get people to come on the channel with the assurance that they will remain in control of their likeness and the things they say, and we're not going to get funny with the edit or post something that makes them look ridiculous or any of those things, right? So he exercised his right under that deal. And that is a bummer, but that is his right. So I am going to try to summarize and talk around as a solo person here some of the topics that we actually bickered about during that hour and 40-minute collaboration. And I'm going to provide the hypothetical that we worked with throughout the entirety of that conversation, which is as follows. You have a bad actor who has sexually harassed multiple women in a workplace. Many women. And one of his victims comes into this hypothetical law firm, and she is not in touch with the other victims, but she is aware that other victims exist. And she hires the law firm, contingency basis, and tells the law firm everything. And the law firm is now aware multiple victims. They might turn up a few victims on federal court dockets or state court dockets, doing searches, things like that. But they're aware that there's at least 10 more victims out there. And the guy's a bad guy and a serial sexual harasser, right? And so the firm immediately knows, well, in discovery, we might find a lot of these things. But also, this guy's a pretty clever guy. He's probably not always creating track record, like documented breadcrumb, things to follow to these victims, right? So like discovery will probably be amazing and an amazing boon to this case, but the guy's connected, guy's got strategies, he's been doing this a long time, he's a long time bad actor. He survived this long because he's clever. He's got a little sneaky, a little connected, got some ideas about how to keep a sexual harassment racket going. And he's certainly been successful. Maybe he's intimidated some women, maybe he's bribed some women, some of these victims, like lots of things happen. So the firm sits down and has a meeting, assigns a team of attorneys to the case, right? So, in our firm, that would be 3 attorneys. And right off the bat, team lead turns to the hypothetical partners and she says, hey, I need some resources for this case. This could be a really, really big case. Partnership says, sure. What do you need? What are we talking about? And team lead says, I need a private eye. Right off the bat. Well, that's a big ask because there are legal issues, there are ethical issues, and there are economic issues attached to assigning a private investigator as a resource to a case in this field. I can knock out the ethical and legal issues super quick. And that goes a little something like this. Did you ever watch, and the answer might be no, but did you ever watch like Dog the Bounty Hunter, the reality show? It's been off for a long time, I think. Sometimes in that show, they do things and you're like, holy shit, I can't believe they can do those things. And I'm not making any comments about Dog the Bounty Hunter or his associates. I'm sure it was all above board to whatever extent it was real. But the answer might sometimes be, in the field of bounty hunting, that the monetary recovery could be so good, could be such, that the individuals involved don't always care about the law or the ethics involved. Or they're forced to make cost-benefit, risk assessment decisions about whether or not to obey the ethics and laws in play. And I have found, realistically speaking, that thing that I noticed in Dog the Bounty Hunter can very much potentially also be true in the world of high-end, highly compensated private investigators. Gumshoes, private eyes, whatever you want to call them, right? Thinking of the Alkaline Trio song, Private Eye. Anyways, I digress. And so when you have a private eye getting paid, I don't know, like, let's say $2,000, $2,500 an hour, they might be inclined to do things that you, the attorney, would very much wish they would not do. Because while the risks to the private investigator might be somewhat meager, the hypothetical risks to the attorney and the attorney's license and the attorney's insurance could be catastrophic, right? So right off the bat, the attorney, from an ethical and legal standpoint, needs to have a really good relationship and some level of trust with this vendor, this private investigator, this outfit, because they're going to probably use more than one person, almost always. And that's almost always true because you're gonna have stuff like the old school tradecraft, like they follow people without getting caught. They pump people for information. They have conversations without trying to let people know they're having conversations. They might hypothetically go through people's trash. There's a lot of things they do on the tradecraft side, and then these days there's a lot of electronic things they do, a lot of electronic surveillance. There's a lot of picture taking and video taking, automated and otherwise. But also sometimes they and you gotta be very careful to control this, but they'll seek access to certain things, and you got to make electronic devices, stuff like that, and you got to be very careful about them engaging in that, because that can breach a web of laws, federal and state and local. And like the risks are many, right? So too, from the private eye's perspective, can the rewards be many, and potentially also from the client's perspective. But the attorneys, you don't want to let a private investigator kamikaze your career for $2,500 an hour, right? That's the long and short of it. So the ethical and legal, you got to really keep a white knuckle grip on these private investigators and make sure they're not doing bad things while they're trying to help you do good things. Now, there's also this economic issue. Excuse me. And in making this video, it's a very common demand, right? The client comes in, and the hypothetical I provided here is really well suited to the use of a private investigator, because you want to find those other witnesses, those other victims, other whatever it is, and you're going to search the dockets, federal, state. You're going to do some FOIA requests. You're going to everything you can to find out who else this guy has harmed and who else might have brought a case, right? But let's face it, we know only about 4% of victims actually report or go forward with a case, as far as we can tell. So if you're just looking for the cases filed, odds are you're turning up about 4% of his victims. To which I would say, insufficient. Just completely insufficient, right? That's not enough. There's so much more you could do to help your client if you can find these other victims who can corroborate your client's story. And in so doing, remove the risk from the case and potentially add value. By removing the risk, you can push the negotiations much harder, or you can feel more confident going to trial, whatever it is, right? So that case is really well suited to a private investigator who would have legal and ethical options that she or he could engage in to find these other victims. Or even potentially, find out what this bad actor has said about his victims, or how he's spoken about them, or how he's bragged about them, all these things. There's so many things they can find out, right? And you can get this huge dossier of all the horrible things this gentleman has said about his victims and all the people he's harassed, and all the HR cases that didn't go anywhere and never got filed, all the things. Tremendous. But in so doing, you might find yourself very rapidly $20,000 in the hole on a case that has just begun. And that makes a lot of sense on a case that is well suited to being aided by a private investigator. But clients don't give a hoot about whether or not their individual case is well suited to a private investigator. They're just going to say, I want the private eye. I want to destroy this guy. And two things. One, we're not in the business of destroying people unless it is required to help our client, right? There's certain people who require you to destroy them for your client to be receiving what they're due. And listen, I'm happy to put those people 6 feet under, metaphorically. Not my concern. You can make amends for what you did, monetarily or otherwise, whatever my client wants, or you can fight. That's your choice. Your choice may require me to do some things to you that I'd rather not, right? But that's still your choice. I don't have a choice. Ethically, I'm required to put my client first. So I don't get a choice. You have a choice. And if you choose the hole in the ground, it'd be my perception that my ethical duty is to put you there. So, metaphorically, to be clear, we're not killing anyone. Although sometimes they do fake suicide after we go after them. So let me bring it back in here. Right off the bat, the firm has to be ready to say no, right? Like, somebody comes to you with a case that is not well suited. Let's say it's state law, just a case, 4 people in a room, terrible sexual harassment. All 4 people are identified. You're aware of them. You have the entire HR chain. You have everything that went on. You have all the witnesses, all the involved parties, all within your reach for deposition, all the documents. There's nothing else. There's no history of this guy sexually harassing other people. He's not going and terrorizing his son's tutor with sexualized comments. He's not, for all intents and purposes, it appears to be a one-time thing. It's never a truly one-time thing, because if you're willing to do something horrific, like sexually harass someone, or sexually assault someone, whatever it is, listen, that's a flaw in who you are, right? If you'll do it once, you'll do it again. But there's people who do it as an addiction. There's people who do it on a serialized basis, and there's people who lose control every now and then and slip up and do it. It's still bad, but there's probably not 10 other victims out there, right? So it's probably not smart to spend 10 grand trying to find victims who don't exist, or 20 grand, or 30 grand, whatever it is, right? Now, further, you'll find a lot of things when you hire private eyes, like horrific things about people's marriages. And you got to be a little bit careful, because often the client feels very, very vengeful. But of course, your job is to help the client win the case. And in winning the case, being made whole. Generally, being made whole does not include revenge. And in fact, revenge, we could look at it as an economically non-viable option. Right? And there's a lot of clients who are like, end that man's marriage. You have it. You have the power to end his marriage right now. Or worse, blackmail that man. They want you to blackmail the guy, which is fundamentally illegal, right? And the answer is no. We will not be doing that. Listen, we may use the evidence of this very young woman, this tutor for this gentleman's son, or like whatever, school person, right? Resource teacher, whatever it is, right? And we might use that evidence because it shows a pattern of behavior, right? What kind of human being terrorizes the educator, the one-to-one educator, for their child with sexual come-ons? What kind of creature does that, right? And so listen, that might be useful for a variety of situations in court or mediation, right? But you don't extort, you don't blackmail, you don't say I'm gonna put you in jail if you don't give my client money, because we're not Mr. Avenatti, or Avenatti, as they, I think, call him, who went to jail for allegedly, potentially, I think, some of those things. Now, we don't do that. That's a crime, right? Listen, there's other things he alleged. I don't know the particulars, so I don't want to. Maybe I'm wrong about the allegations. I don't want to. But I can tell you, we have no interest in breaking the law or extorting or blackmailing. That's not what we do. We get clients paid for what was done to them. And if, hypothetically, what was done to that one-to-one school educator, we won't specify, is useful evidence, then yeah, we use it. And if that happens to ruin a marriage, that's really not our business, right? That's a choice the bad actor made, and we didn't have a choice. We had to do things that were going to help our client, but we don't have to do the things that don't help our client, right? So there's something unrelated, like, I don't know, the guy, same guy, sexual harasser, but we find out that he buys up a couple acres in the rainforest every year just to burn them, just to destroy the rainforest, and like send pictures to his buddies and be like, ha 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 ha, Captain Planet, take this, right? Like, bad dude, bad thing to do. Probably not valuable to our case, at least not very much. But his spouse, his wife, is very environmentally conscious. She might leave him. Not our business. Not my care. Doesn't have a value to the case, so I leave it. I don't use it. Right? There's no. You have to work towards your client's best interest in the case, not your client's potential vicious rage and thirst for revenge. Right? So that's another thing you kind of have to keep your eye on, is that you're going to get a lot more than you want out of a private eye. You're also going to get things, sometimes you're like, I better not look at that because I don't understand how you got it. What is this? How did you obtain it? This is terrifying. And then I would urge you, if you get something like that from a private investigator, you may not want to work with that private investigator again. Because if you think they're breaking the law or the ethics, to go back to the original part of this conversation, that's not okay. And I've heard those stories, right? Listen, it's 2024. You open a text message, somebody can own your phone. It is that simple in 2024, as I understand it. But I would urge you, as an attorney, you may not want to give in to that temptation. You would need to consider a number of ethical issues and other legal issues, various hacking laws, wiretapping statutes, the idea that you're viewing the communications of a represented party, presumably on their handheld device or their computer, potentially with their attorney. Tremendous ethical risk. Tremendous ethical failure, right? So, can't do it. Shouldn't do it. Mustn't do it, right? And a lot of the time what you're going to find is the tradecraft stuff might have more value, as analog and ancient as it might be, but the social engineering, the chit-chat, the following, the surveillance, whatever it is, it can really produce results. And it can put you at a lot less risk as a counselor, right, as a litigator. So you'll need to control your thirst for knowledge and your avarice and your desire to put up numbers for your client and to help, right? And your righteous indignation and rage and your moral high ground. You might have to just draw a line and say, yeah, but some of the electronic stuff is a no-go. We can't do it. Can't have it, right? And that's just a reality. We're not the NSA, the CIA. We're not Dog the Bounty Hunter. We're licensed professionals. And it took us a lot of years and a lot of money to get that license. And if the license goes away, we're not going to help anybody. Tomorrow, the day after, the years to come, we're not helping anybody. Not helping any clients. We're not paying the mortgage. We're not sending the kids to school. We're not feeding ourselves. It's over. So, I would urge you, if you've taken that potentially very wise and aggressive step to work with a private investigator, I would urge you to tread very lightly on the electronic side of that endeavor. And every step you take on that side, I would urge you to have a long and very in-depth think cogitation about the ethical and legal ramifications of what you're receiving and how it might have been obtained. Because they will not tell you. Generally speaking, they are aware to not tell you. But that is an imperfect shield at best, I assure you. And let's look at it from a prosecutor's perspective. Okay, so you got real-time data from this person's phone. Just real-time data from this phone. How'd you think you were getting it? Well, they didn't tell me. Do you think he consented? Do you think they went up to him and asked, hey, can we put this bug on your phone, this program on your phone that feeds our private investigator service real-time data from your phone so we can read your messages? And you think he just consented? Probably not, right? So how'd you think they got it? Is this a hot seat that you would like to be in, hypothetically? I wouldn't. I sure wouldn't. So, listen. Yes, consider using these resources. Where appropriate, when appropriate, where ethically appropriate, legally viable, and economically viable. Consider using these resources. But don't be tempted to yeet your life and license away because you want to know more. Take what you can get ethically, legally, and do the rest in discovery. And then consider forensic discovery, right? There's a lot of things maybe you don't get in discovery that you can pursue. Maybe they've been deleted. Maybe this, maybe that. Who knows? But it's not, there's ways to get things that would be legal. And you could certainly get someone's text messages with the right subpoena for the right carrier, right? If you get it in a timely fashion. Is it difficult to do? Yeah. It's hard as heck. Can it change the course of a case? Absolutely. Can you do it without having someone put a literal Trojan horse on someone else's phone, breaking the law? It can be done. And where appropriate, should be. But, maybe don't let the private eye do it. Just a recommendation. Anyways, I'm going on a 30-minute rant here. The 140-minute version was way better. I missed multiple topics that were covered. I'm positive. Doing my best. But, listen. Consider the resources that should be attached to a case. Long and hard. And if you can't afford the appropriate resources for a case, consider not taking it. But also, don't just throw resources that are inappropriate or unethical or illegal at a case. Not worth it. Not going to work. Not the way forward. Ever. Ever. I assure you. Anyways, like, subscribe, comment down below. Share the channel so it may grow. Take care, everybody.